Hello, my name is Paul Yoder, Field Agronomist for Pioneer, and in today's video I want to discuss with you what you might be seeing in some cornfields that were planted in that May 13th time frame this year. If you have corn planted in that time frame, you will find some of your fields that look pretty sporadic. You will see a lot of variation in growth and development, and because of this I will share with you what I'm seeing in these fields as I'm walking them and some thoughts as to why you may be seeing this. So in some cases you may have a very nice looking stand with nothing to worry about. In other cases, you may have some plants that are just starting to spike through that soil surface, and in those cases, you should be fine. In other parts of the field, you may have areas where you don't see anything emerging at all. And when you start digging, you will probably find kernels where the radicle is starting to develop. And the radicle, as you know, is the root part of the developing kernel and is the first thing to come out as it's growing. However, as you will see here, when you look closely, you can see it's brown and pinched in on the tip of that radicle, and that is a sign that the radicle is dead and will no longer develop. You will also notice that there's no shoot or mesocotyl on the seed starting to emerge either. I've also seen some kernels that actually have very long radicle with no mesocotyl or shoot. In other cases, I'm finding kernels, that look like you just planted them. However, when you look really close at the kernel tip, at that radicle, you will probably see where it is browned and basically rotten and dead. So even though the seed is for the most part firm, this kernel will unfortunately no longer develop and is dead. And so you may be asking, what does this mean and how did it happen? Again, if you look at the particular kernel and the kernels I've described, you will think back to the weather during that May 13th time frame and a few days prior to that. We had nighttime temperatures in the 30s. We had a few days where it was overcast and cloudy with the highs in the 50s, and again nighttime temps in the 30s. The soil prior to May 13th time frame, we had good moisture. We had received some nice rains, but then after that we started to receive even more rain, and in places, unfortunately, we had saturated soils. With what I'm seeing here is a prime example of what chilling effect can do to corn kernels. I'm sure you've all heard us talk about the watch-outs and the reasons for not planting in cold soils or before a cold snap is because we don't want that corn kernel imbibing a cold drink of water in that first 24 to 48 hours after you planted it. Otherwise, you're going to get developing seedlings like this. The chilling effect will rupture the cell membranes of that kernel. It disrupts the cell development and basically affects plant development overall, and you'll get situations like this. So unfortunately at this time frame, as I mentioned earlier, we had cold weather, we had additional rain, saturated soils, and in some cases probably reduced amount of soil oxygen due to the fact that some of the soil profile was compacted, and you will add to the reduced development of that kernel. However, what I'm seeing is heavily related to the cooler weather during the day, the cold nighttime temps, and the fact that the kernel imbibed a cold drink of water in that first 24 to 48 hours. And unfortunately, like this, the damaged kernel enough to where it's just not going to grow. Now, if you go out and you start taking some stand counts, and in this time of year, if you have an even stand of around 24,000 population, I would keep it. If it's anything underneath 24,000, I would probably tear it up and replant. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to call your Pioneer seed agent or anyone of us here at Pioneer, and we will be more than happy to come out and help. Thank you, and stay safe.
That concludes this Pioneer Agronomy video podcast. Visit our page on pioneer.com and follow us on Twitter and Facebook for more agronomy insights.